Chicago.
Hello and welcome to Bridging Chicago. I'm Joseph Amari, your host. On this episode, we welcome Carlos Martinez and Jacque Stefanic of Serving People with a Mission, an organization dedicated to giving people the tools to become servant leaders by learning from various experts. Jacque, Carlos, welcome to Bridging Chicago.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Super excited.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. So we always start by asking people their Chicago story. So I'd love to hear you share a little bit about if you're from Chicago, when you came to Chicago, or a little bit more about your background. Carlos, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So where do I start? I was born in Chicago. I grew up in Mexico to a Mexican mom and a Peruvian dad. But I was in Mexico until I was maybe 13 years old. And then I came back to the United States back in 2012. I lived in Texas for a year, and then after that I came to Chicago. I didn't really know English at first, so it was kind of just a pretty, huge learning curve for me to get used to the culture and just leaving my friends behind. I was a little older already, so I was in my teens, my teenage years, so it was a little bit, messy. But overall, it's been nice living in Chicago. I live in Little Village, which is, I guess, on the west side, southwest. I don't know. People have their own opinions about that. I've been living here for maybe 10 years, 9 years in Little Village, and I love it here. I graduated from high school here in Little Village back in 2017, and I graduated Loyola University of Chicago last year.
Oh, awesome. Okay. And Jacque, how about you? What is your Chicago background?
So I was actually born in the far south side of Chicago, around like the West Pullman area, which is one of the neighborhoods down there. And, I was born to a black mother and a white father, so I am biracial. And my last name is Stefanic, comes from the Czech Republic, and my first name is French, but I'm actually not French, but it's kind of an interesting twist. But I grew up in the South Side, but I also kind of grew up interracially. Many of my white family, they lived in the suburbs, and my black family lived in the South Side of Chicago. So I grew up between those two cultures, between those two socioeconomic classes. And I thought it was always really interesting. I never really noticed it that much when I was growing up, between black and white. And, as I grew older, and now I'm starting to realize that it was actually pretty interesting growing up between those two different classes and those two different races of people. But regardless, I grew up more specifically in the Westtown neighborhood. That's where I went to school. I went to Rauner College Prep over there. I graduated from Rauner in 2017. I then went to Arrupe College where I met Carlos. Him and I served together in student government. And then I actually graduated from Loyola University of Chicago last year. And I have my bachelor's in business administration. And I'm currently working in Bronzeville. I work in another nonprofit based down here and helping youth get jobs and, just mainly workforce development and peer mentorship. So that's a little bit of my story.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so what kind of stuff were you guys involved in when you first met? You said you were in student government.
Yeah. So Carlos and we met each other. I think we met each other in 2017, like right when we graduated from high school. We met each other in the first few months of our college career at Arrupe College. I became the student senator for this business student, so I represented all of the business students at Arrupe College. I then went on to run for student body president. I actually won the ticket, and then Carlos was actually elected the vice president. So him and I worked together in terms of representing the student body of Arrupe College. So we represented an entire group of people, students from the School of Arrupe College, which is a small feeder school of Loyola University of Chicago. So we served at Arrupe College for about a year, and then we later on went to transfer to the bigger university, Loyola University of Chicago, where we also served another term in student government there. So we worked together in terms of just serving people and representing people for about 2 years at Loyola University of Chicago. But then again, we started our own organization, as we know, as Serving People with a Mission. And then we've just been continuing to serve through that aspect.
And so your organization, Serving People with a Mission, that was inseminated when you guys were together in student government?
I think, Carlos, you can probably speak on it a little bit more.
Yeah, actually, I remember there's another. So Jacque and myself, we are two of the co-founders. There is a third co-founder who is now doing their own job outside of SPWAM for now. But the three of us came together back in maybe 2019. We went out for dinner. The three of us had worked on student government previously, and we became really close friends. And we were having dinner, and we just said, one day we're gonna do something to help people. We're gonna figure it out. We don't know what we want to do. We're done with student government for now, but we're gonna get back together and do something. Fast forward, I don't know, March 2020, when everything was going down with COVID. We had actually just gotten sent back home from campus, from Loyola. Things were just getting a little bit messy for everyone's lives, just getting flipped upside down. And that's when it clicked in my head, okay, I think it's time to do something. It's now or never kind of thing, because you just don't know what's going to happen. So I said to myself, why not just start a nonprofit that helps people? We still didn't know what we wanted to do exactly. I just went to Jacque and Valeria, that's the other co-founder, and I talked to them. We met for, I don't know, the entire summer of 2020. And as we kept noticing how things were getting worse in terms of COVID and the riots going on due to George Floyd, we said, okay, we need to figure something out to actually get inside the communities and give back all the things that we've received. Because that's what Loyola and Aruba College did for us. They gave so many things to us in terms of leadership, in terms of professional development, and just feeling like you're part of something, that we wanted to go back into the communities around Chicago to give back to those communities as well.
Absolutely. And so, given that background, what is it about providing access to these resources that's so important? How does that impact the people that you're trying to provide to?
I'm sorry, can you actually repeat that question? I cut off a little bit.
Oh, no problem. So given your background with student government representation, how does that in turn, providing access to people with your nonprofit now, how does that serve them? What kind of access to resources do you hope to provide, and how does that benefit them going forward?
Yeah, so and honestly, everything goes back to the name of our organization. We spend a lot of time thinking about the name. We came up with Serving People with a Mission, or SPM for short. But, you read it like a sentence. You're serving people with the mission. And the mission, what's the mission? I personally like to say the mission is totally up to you. The mission is obviously to bring positive change to other people, give them resources, but, you can do that in many different aspects. So we launched our very first program. It's a high school program that is specifically designed to actually engage youth. More specifically, high school youth, teenagers, people who are between the ages of like 14 and 19 years old, right? So we engaged Farragut Career Academy as our pilot program. So we started last year in November. We launched our program, and the idea was to provide them with the resources they need to become what we like to go by as a servant leader, somebody who's going to go into their community, identify what's the problem, and identify the solution of that. Identify the solution of that problem. So that's what we're teaching them. It's essentially the knowledge, but also not just the knowledge. We're taking them and walking hand in hand with them in terms of going into the community as well. So yeah, we do workshops with our students. We do the simple like resume building. We do like how to become a leader, how to tell your story, how to network, so on and so forth. The program is much bigger than it sounds. But the other part of the program is volunteering. We want our students, or more specifically our participants, to volunteer in the communities that they are from, the communities that they represent, and the communities where they come from. So we partnered with another institution known as New Life Centers. It's a community center in Little Village, not far away from from Farragut. And we had our high school students go to New Life Centers every other week, and they would actually mentor children there. So in other words, they were kind of not stepping down to their level, but they were, kind of turning around and saying, okay, I'm a teenager. I still have some way where I can give back to others. And their way of giving back to others is through mentorship. Like me, for example, I'm a 23-year-old, right? I graduated from Loyola last year. Same thing with Carlos. We step down, we mentor teenagers in high school, right? We tell them, hey, here's how to build a resume. Here's how to prepare for the workforce, but here's how to be a mentor. Here's how to be a service to other people, right? They process that information, and we walk with them in processing that information, because we're able to step down to their level saying, hey, I was in high school 5 years ago, less than 5 years ago, actually. I used to be in your shoes. That's how we can connect with them. We take that skill and that knowledge and we say, I want you to do the exact same thing we did with you, but to somebody who's younger than you. So in other words, this is a system called trickle down mentoring. Like, we're just passing down information in an efficient way where people are just understanding it, and just making sure that they're using the information for the greater good of the community and the greater good of the individual that they're serving. So that's really the secret sauce of our program. So don't go tell everybody that. I'm just playing, but I think it really needs to be spreading across the city, because it's super crucial. And the fact that we are actually expanding our program to another high school just almost screams the fact that it's successful, and that we need to continue to do this. We need people who are in our shoes to continue to mentor people who are younger than them, so on and so forth, because everyone has a mentor. Everyone can be a mentor as well. So that's kind of our vision of our after school program, why we serve. So yeah.
Absolutely. And so it sounds like one of the premises I took away from that is that it's fostering a culture of giving back and fostering a culture of passing forward the opportunities and also experience that you've had to kind of culminate into something bigger.
Definitely. I mean, I think back to my time as a high school student at Farragut, because surprise, I graduated from there. I'm an alum from Farragut High School, and I didn't feel like I was given that many opportunities, not because people didn't want to give them to me, but because they were not available. Oftentimes, people with the ability to do things, they forget about these communities that are known or have bad reps, like Little Village, and they cannot ignore the students, or they don't think that it's worth a while giving back to them. So when I got to Arupe and I met Jacque and I met all the people at Arupe, they believed in me. They believed that I could actually do something for myself. They instilled this idea of giving back to others as well, because it was not going to just be me by myself all the time figuring it out on my own. I had friends, I had mentors, I had professors, staff, people that were always there willing to help. And that's exactly what we want to do with the students. We want to let them know that, hey, you can do it, but we're going to help you because you need the help. Everyone does. So.
Absolutely. And that support system can be, especially for someone who's in that early stage in high school, developing kind of their sense of self and their understanding of who they are, what they want to do going forward. Having someone who's a little bit older, who's able to, say, hey, I've been in your shoes and this is what I've seen. I'm sure that the reward of that for them is, okay, I have someone who's got my back. Have you felt like the students you've mentored have had that attitude, like, okay, I have some support system now?
Definitely. I can point out one specific student. I'm not going to say their name just because of privacy, but they were always so excited to see us. And they actually you can actually see some of her pictures on our social media. She was our speaker for the graduation that we did for the students that completed the program. She is a sophomore. She's now a junior in high school. And she spoke in front of 50 plus people during the graduation. And after that, she just let us know that, hey, thank you for actually being there for us and actually caring. Because mind you, the program, we did it essentially as volunteers. We're still in the process of learning how to fundraise and get better at that. So we are volunteering our time to be with these students. And that's something that they recognize, that we're actually there because we want to be there with them. And we're also learning at the same time. And it's fun.
Absolutely. And I mean, that is a testament to, the passion that you have for this program and what it is, because, at the onset of any great journey is, the first step. It's relatively small. Carlos, I read that you believe that leadership is defined not by the scale of the opportunity, but by the quality of the response. What does that quote mean to you?
Wow, thank you for the flashback. I read that a couple of years ago, and it's been there in a lot of the things that I do now and that I plan to do in the future. To me, it just means that it doesn't matter how small or how little you think your willingness to help is, or the things that you do. It's the fact that you're going out there and doing it, because it doesn't cost a thing to actually help someone. We have so many resources. There's so many things that I know that someone else might be in need of, and the same thing with other people. There's something that Jacque knows that someone else can benefit from. So why not use those things that we know, the things that we have, to help others?
Absolutely. And Jacque, do you kind of follow that same line of thinking?
Yeah, and to kind of continue what Carlos's vision is about on that, for example, here's a recent story. So yesterday we were recruiting at a high school to launch our next program. And, we have a really short application process in terms of saying, hey, I want to understand like where you are currently as a leader. And, one of the students asked me yesterday, they were like, well, I don't think I'm a leader. And she was like, what do I put in this question? Because I don't know what to put. And I'm like, well, number one, you are a leader, because everyone here in this planet has some sort of leadership within them. Like, yourself as a leader, we wouldn't be here without this podcast, without your leadership. Same thing with Carlos and myself. Like, we started this organization based off leadership. So that's what we pass down to the students, like making sure that they understand that they are a leader, because I think it's a common misconception that many people and, many young people out here are just saying like, oh, somebody who's a leader, and I do quote, it needs to be somebody who's in high power, as in like, somebody in politics, like a CEO, like a boss, somebody who's supposed to be bossing people around is what I'm getting the sense of is what a lot of our youth are saying. And that's not always the case. Like, yeah, a CEO is a leader, a boss is a leader. But then again, you as a 14-year-old is a leader in your own way, because number one, you're going to go mentor people younger than you. You're going to help other people in your own way, right? Just because, people out here are saying, I'm the CEO of this gigantic company, or I'm the, I'm the manager over here. Those are like the basic leadership titles that we normally hear about. But, I think it's something that a lot of our youth really just need to process that, hey, yeah, those are leadership titles. But then again, there are many other sources of leadership that are just not, your traditional, what I see on the news type of leadership.
Absolutely. And going back to that quote, I mean, the quality of the response, I think to your point, a leader, as a 14-year-old can be a positive influence on their friends. Hey guys, let's go study. Let's go, join an organization. Let's get involved, get active. That leadership in itself can, lead to so many positive changes. So I totally understand that point. What would you say in terms of the future? You mentioned vision. What is the vision for serving people with a mission for the upcoming year, the upcoming few years? Where do you see this all going?
Yeah, so we are in the process of expansion. We hands down know what we're good at. Serving people with a mission. Like, number one, we're good at serving people. That's a given, right? But we have our after school program that's expanding. We're expanding to another high school this year, so stay tuned in that. But we never mentioned anything about our other service. So we have this other service known as Giving People. And it's a service that allows the community to be involved with members of the unsheltered and the homeless community. So it's essentially a donation and a resource drive. So we collect food, clothes, and hygiene products from various institutions, city colleges of Chicago, Loyola, and just random people who want to say, hey, I have clothes, I have food, I want to donate it to your organization. We take those resources, food, clothes, and hygiene kits, we itemize it, we wash them, and then we go into the community where a lot of people who are homeless, people would say they're homeless villages, right? So we go into homeless villages and we talk to these people who are either unsheltered or they're homeless. And we actually give them these resources. We give them, food, clothes. When we had money, we were able to give them, more resources such as like venture cards and actually hygiene packs and kits. And, this is a whole nother aspect of serving people with a mission, because it really serves as a great volunteer opportunity. not only because we're able to give people, resources that they need to survive in the world, because, not everybody in Chicago has a roof over their head. As we speak, there are people out here who don't have a home to go to. But that's our other part of our service. We have our hand-in-hand leadership program and our giving people service. And I think the biggest takeaway about giving people is kind of having simple conversations with some of these people that you would see, on the side of the highway. You would see refugees, and you're like, let's just sit down. Like, I can give you some food and clothes, but, let's have a conversation, not just like, here, and then I'll see you around. Like, you talk to these people, trying to understand where they come from. A lot of these people are refugees from European, African countries, Asian countries, and you'll be so surprised to understand how they got here. And you're like, wow, you're here with your wife, your son, and you don't have a home to go to, unfortunately. And we are doing our best. I wish we could do more, obviously, but, the best we can do is saying, here's some clothes for the winter. I know winter's coming up. Here's some food. I know it's going to cover you for a couple of days. We don't give any money to them, but, we give them like hygiene products as well. And then we give them a conversation. And, sometimes we see them every now and then if we go back into the field and start, giving out food and clothes to the homeless. But, sometimes we don't see them anymore. Sometimes they move around. So they're pretty mobile around the city. But that is our other aspect of our services. So we're expanding on that as well. And I'm hoping that we can gather more volunteers to be part of the giving people service, because it's a really good takeaway. Like, if you want to volunteer, please volunteer with us. We traditionally do it on the weekends when we actually have time. We just do a volunteer call. Hey, who's available? We'll just meet over here, meet over here in Chinatown, meet over here in the West Loop. And, we'll give you a bag of resources. Then we'll just divide and conquer and try our best to communicate and, give out as many resources as we can. So we're expanding that for sure. And we're expanding our hand-in-hand leadership program. And in terms of development of both of those services and programs, we are trying our best to fundraise more. That's something that we're really getting into right now. Nobody in this organization gets paid. We're all full-time volunteers, and, we understand our call. Like, I think most of us already have our own jobs. We're able to pay for our basic living expenses. But the work that we do in serving people with a mission, it is a full-time job. We have to staff the program. We have to gather the food and clothes for the homeless, or else nobody else is going to do it, right? So, that's my vision for expansion. I really hope we can get more funding for our hand-in-hand leadership program. We raised a lot of money last year, and all of that money went to the program. Like, all of it went to our students, giving people service. I would tell you the number, but, it's a little bit, we're still like, in the beginning stages of our grassroots career. So, but, it wasn't a lot. It wasn't like, $10 million or $1 million nonprofit. It's not like that for sure. We raised enough to staff our program, and we raised enough to get the resources we needed for the homeless and the unsheltered. And we just, we used that money to serve people with a mission. That's the whole mission of our organization. I don't really, I really don't care about a paycheck. I do care about getting money for the organization, but, compensating myself, not appropriate at the moment at all. That's for a later time, obviously. But, our call at the moment is to continue to serve people with a mission, and the show must go on. We're going to continue expanding our giving people service, and we're going to continue serving more high school youth. And there are challenges that come with lack of funding. It's hard. As all of us as volunteers, we have to call off of work sometimes, right? We have to create time to actually be in front of students, but we're doing it. So yeah, in other words, to answer your question directly, we are expanding to more high schools, and we are expanding our volunteer outreach for our giving people service.
Absolutely. I think a lot of great points you just made, but I think that passion, like right now at the beginning stages, it's like a seed, right? And then with the appropriate water is that effort and that care. Who knows what it can blossom into? But I think that dedication shines through. And then one other thing you mentioned that I think is very poignant, it's when you go into an unsheltered community and you have those conversations and that understanding and empathy, that can mean so much, because I think there can be this, preconceived notion that someone is there due to their own, failures. But I think that's almost always not the case. There's always, societal imbalances that have led to people having those situations. And so going out and having those conversations, spreading awareness, spreading understanding, I think that makes such a positive impact. And then, of course, providing resources helps them to sustain and hopefully hopefully find better circumstances in the short and long term future.
Yeah, and
so I think both.
And to continue on
what
you were saying, like, like having conversations with, many of these people, and, a lot of them are, what's the word? Returning citizens, in other words. They were recently incarcerated, and then you hear their story. They're like, unfortunately, I don't have a social security number. I don't have an ID. So they're kind of like in this stage where they're stuck. And that's an entirely different conversation that we're trying to, have in serving people with a mission. Like, how are we able to serve people who don't have the necessary identification documents to proceed in life, because they're just stuck at that point where they can't interview for work, they can't apply to a job because they don't have basic documentation to prove their identity. But learning from their experiences, they're like, yeah, I recently was out of jail, and I came out of Cook County, or I was living here in another state, and now I ended up in Chicago, type of stuff. So it's definitely very, very impactful conversations, and it's really keeps me motivated to continue to do this work, for sure. So yeah,
absolutely. And Carlos, what is your vision for the short and long term of serving people with a mission?
I agree with everything that Jacque said. My hope, and just something that we're all working toward, just to expand the program and help as many Chicago youth that we're able to, and not only help them, but just connect with them and learn from them as well. There are so many things that we can gain from working with youth, especially nowadays. They have all this knowledge and all this confidence, but sometimes it's just untapped, or it just remains hidden in a way. And we want to see them, we want to see the youth using that to do something good for themselves and for the communities that they are a part of. The dream would be just to have the program be standalone and open for as many youth around the city. That's my hope, because it's not only people in Little Village, it's not only people in West Town or Chinatown or the North Side. It's all over the city. We never know who might need that type of help, and we want to be able to provide it for as many people as we can. And then in terms of the donations drive, I agree with Jacque again. Continue supporting, gaining more donors that are willing to provide resources, clothes, food, and also come out with us and support during the drives as we go around the city, because it is very important to not just ignore it when you see it happen, but also make an effort to get involved and figure out ways where you can actually support the people that are going through this. After speaking to so many of them, you just never know what might happen in your life that could lead you to that point. So understanding and really being able to connect, that gives you a whole other perspective when it comes to their situation. And who knows, maybe in the future, in the long term, the years from now, maybe go to other parts of the country. We've spoken to other people that might be interested across the states. I've spoken to some people that might be interested in Mexico. Who knows? The opportunities are limitless. They're endless. And we know that SPWAM is going to be around for a very long time.
Absolutely. And given both of your ages and the time that you've already put in, I think that there are so many potential paths that this could go. For our listeners, what are some ways that they could get involved?
Yes, we have our social media, so that's obviously the number one thing that they can check out for them to learn, to stay in touch. It is our Instagram, which is a main social media, SPM_elites, and then we have our website, servingpeoplewithamission.org. And if anything is interesting to them, we oftentimes ask people to come into the program and do presentations for the students. If you are compelled to talk to the youth and get involved with that, we're happy to have you and do a presentation for the students about finance, about resume building, networking, mental health, anything that you're passionate about. We'd love to have you and talk to our students. And then for the donations drive, you can find an interest form on our website if you'd like to donate, or if you'd like to come out with us and give the donations to the unsheltered.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think that this is an incredible journey that you guys have already embarked on. I think the mission behind serving people with a mission is very pure, and I really hope that there's a lot of success in the future, because I think our community really needs people that have that motivation to give back. So I want to thank you both for joining us, and I want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of Bridging Chicago podcast. Be sure to visit www.bridgingchicago.com to check out all of our episodes and find ways to connect with our guests. You can also visit us on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, where our handle is @BridgingChicago. And be sure to visit servingpeoplewithamission.org to learn more about serving people with a mission. Carlos, Jacque, thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Bridging Chicago, as produced by the SATC Solutions Center. Nothing contained in this podcast shall constitute financial, investment, legal, and/or professional advice. No professional relationship of any kind is created between you and the podcast host or guest. You are urged to speak with your financial, investment, or legal advisors before making any investment or legal decisions. Furthermore, the opinions expressed in this podcast are not necessarily the opinions of SATC Solutions Center, SATC Law, or any of its employees. This podcast is created by the hosts and guests' individual capacities. All opinions on this podcast are or have been rendered based on specific facts, under certain conditions, and are subject to certain assumptions, and may not and should not be used or relied upon for any other purpose, including, but not limited to, or use in or in connection with any investment purposes or legal proceeding.